Hello, everyone. Welcome to another astrology question and answer time. It's Claire. We are going to be talking about a few different topics that I either forgot about in past months. So I apologize. I'm going to be talking today a bit about Pluto, Neptune sextiles, which it's like in the old times when you had papers on a desk and a paper got stuck underneath another paper. And I found it, but it's probably 2 months too late. So I apologize to whoever that question was. Also, we're going to talk about air trines or just grand trines in general. So that'll be a discussion. And then also Inanna's descent myth, which is we're going to essentially be talking about Venus and one myth about Venus or proto-Venus, what we had before Venus, and how that can relate to reading the secondary progressed chart. So, myth and using that as a story. Let's see. I have some announcements. I have anecdotes. I have a lot of things. I'm gonna see because this is a live event. I've got some questions queued up, but I'm also here mainly. I've got my own agenda, of course, I always do. But for those who are live here, you are prioritized. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. If you are listening to this later and you would like to ask a question for next month, I have these every second Thursday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern time. If you have a question that you want to go over next month, you can put it in the comments below and I'll grab it for next month. I did not do a call for questions this month, but it's because I have a backlog. Okay, so there's also about a 20-second delay. So if you do put something in the chat, if you're here live, know that it might take me a minute to notice it or see it, but that is where you want to put that stuff. And then announcements. So I'm a full-time astrologer and I do readings, and you can catch all of my work at www.aligninglightastrology.com. I actually wanted to show you my resources on my website. This is something I send to people all the time through email, but let me just share my screen. On my website, oh, there I am. Here's all my thingies. I have this resources page, and on this page, I've got a few things. I've got a beginner cheat sheet. It's my kind of shorthand guide, a quick reference tool, if you will. Let me click it here so you can see it goes to a PDF that you can download for free. I also have a template if you are someone who's trying to do readings or trying to set yourself up to do readings. I like to fill at least, especially when I was getting started with my routine and doing readings. I like to have this not as something that I'd fill out every single point for every single client, but just kind of a checklist to make sure I didn't miss anything really important. So I have here, that up here, that's just free. All this stuff is free. It's just things that I wish I would have had when I started. And then I have, this is a non-inclusive list, which sometimes I feel bad because I don't like having people not on a list, that are really cool. So there's more cool people than even I have on this, but it's my favorite astrology learning stuff and my favorite extraneous readings that can help with astrology. My favorite resources and apps and all kinds of stuff that I've found useful over the years is all in this document. So I just wanted to point that out as a first thing today. That's there. And then, oh, hello, David. Hello, Anne. Hello, Easy. Nice to see you. Uh, oh, we've got someone from Iowa. Hello. Yeah, I'm from Minnesota originally. So hello to my downstairs neighbors. Uh, I think the first topic, and PS, again, anyone who's here, put your question in the chat if you have one. And also, like, totally fair game to ask me about transits. I might not be able to answer like personal chart questions, but if you've got like a question about any transit going on in the sky right now, that's also fair game. You can ask me about that too. I usually have that kind of stuff come up more during my forecast, but this is another space where I'm here, so why not? Let's talk about, I think, an easy kind of first thing for me to discuss. Let's talk about trines. Let's talk about easeful things like trines. Um, so in astrology, we've got our four main components. We've got planets, signs, houses. And then our fourth component are these aspects, which in my software is noted by all these lines that are all up in the middle here. Already we're getting a bias because the trines and the sextiles are colored blue, which by color psychology is usually seen as more favorable or positive, versus the difficult aspects like an opposition or a square. Those are red, which our brain is automatically going to be like, oh no, alert, alert. So I just want to make note of that. Now, in general, I think, yes, we can go with the general heuristic idea that sextiles and trines, no matter what the ingredients, we'll get to that nuance. In general, trines and sextiles are going to be seen as or experienced as more stable, more easeful, more fruitful, advantageous or profitable or helpful in some way. Uh, Whereas squares and oppositions are going to, in general, I think, again, it's pretty safe to say that oppositions and squares, there's going to be some type of tension, some type of difficulty, challenge, etc. Um, Underneath those umbrellas of general, yeah, you can make those assumptions. There are nuances, though, I think, that are worth noting. So, let's just start with what the heck has been a nice aspect recently. Let's talk about, yeah, the Sun and Jupiter. They're having a trine today. They're in a nice sextile here. Um, or a trine, but I'll use this as an example. Oh, moon. Moon is in trine. Uh, the ingredients here, in this case, we've got luminaries, we've got Jupiter. I feel pretty safe in saying that those planets are going to be working harmoniously together. Uh, Especially like Jupiter and Sun are both on the daytime sect team of planets. And so they're kind of on the same team and they're already going to be more amicable to work with each other. But then it's a different situation, just to contrast that with, say, um, let's go back like a few weeks. Like, what if we have as our ingredients in our nice aspect, this time a trine, Pluto and Mars? What happens when there's like malefic energy, difficult energy, potentially corruption? Someone had asked me about a grand trine that had Jupiter, Chiron, and something else involved, maybe Mars. And I do think the ingredients matter because if we think about the nature of a trine in one way of looking at this, it's not the full picture of what a trine is, I don't think. But if we think about the thema mundi, the nature of a trine is that of Jupiter. What is Jupiter? Jupiter is goodwill, growth, easefulness, abundance, yes, optimism. It's that goodwill and friendship of things to work together. It's having the wind behind your back, sharing the same element, having the support of your community. All of these ways of thinking about how this energy is shared between these two planets. So Mars is sharing their energy with Pluto freely. Mars is sharing their energy with Pluto here in a way that they're almost like offering support, offering a hand in whatever Pluto is doing, or Pluto is maybe offering support or offering a hand to Mars in whatever Mars is doing. Now, I can think of a whole spectrum of things: favorable, ethical, neutral, and corrupt and not great that could happen with this trine because the ingredients are kind of questionable sometimes, like this example. So I don't think that it's as simple or as straightforward to say, oh, it's a trine, everything's going to be fine. But, all in all, I mean, also, what did the ancient astrologers say? So Oh gosh, I should have brought this up now because I do have in my notes somewhere very specific about who said what, but I can't remember which authors said what. But there were in the Hellenistic tradition, let's just look at our bucket of authors. One of them at least said if like a malefic is in a trine or a sextile, it either can't do harm or it's going to do less harm. So let's say the case of, let's say, let's say here, the moon and Mars. So in this case, Mars is in a trine with the moon. Mars is not able to hurt the moon, or if Mars can hurt the moon or harm the moon in some way, or just create tension or whatever it's doing, it's less likely to, or it's softened. The blow is softened in some way. So specifically when we're looking at malefics in trine or sextile, that there's some blunting or softening of that intensity, the instability they bring, the difficulty they bring. So I do think that these more soft aspects can be so helpful and such a huge mitigating factor. But again, I don't think it's as simple as just saying, "Oh, it's a trine, everything's going to be constructive and it's going to feel great." One example I've seen, and well, oh gosh, how do I say this in a way that's respectful? Because there's people out here who are going to have this in their chart, right? And it's going to depend on the rest of the chart, what signs they're in, what the dignity of these planets are, like how healthy they are. But I've seen instances with like a really unhealthy Mercury, a really unhappy Mercury, and a really intense Pluto in a trine. And the person had a pretty warped, corrupt worldview. They were pretty confused about facts and information. And I could tell there was something going on between that trine. It was like free flowing between the corruption and the planning, the corruption and the thinking mind. It was like too easily moving between them, if that makes sense. So I hope that helps people think about trines when they see them in the sky, when they see them in a birth chart. Know that that energy between those two components or through well, the three, okay, let me finish. Yeah, what if it's three? Then it's really like it's going around in a circle, basically. So let's get, yeah, yeah, this. I wish I would have been paying more attention. Well, no, I was. This was that first week of August. Not only did we have that Saturn-Mars opposition, but we also had this air trine between Uranus, Pluto, and Mars. And so we've got energy freely flowing in all three directions here. And I do also think maybe it's another good nuance. I think this is bi-directional. I think this goes either way. I mean, overcoming still applies. Like the planet that's earlier in zodiacal order has the overhand in the situation. So that's another nuance is overcoming. While all of this energy is free flowing from one planet to the next, just supporting each other and just kind of this upward or downward spiral, whichever way we're going. Um, we have three ingredients here. So, I mean, I could make up endless stories. I don't like to speculate. I would like to know the context of a person's life before I start going off. But a good last analytical piece to think about when you're like, how is this going to all play out? Think about like just start somewhere. It doesn't matter where you start because we're going to go around in a circle. But let's just start with Mars. Like I would first analyze how is Mars and Libra going to act? What is that Mars and Libra going to be like? What is it like when they're getting support and free flowing energy from a planet of chaos or interruptions or disruptions or novelty they've never experienced before? How is Mars going to navigate that? And then in turn, whatever Mars is doing, that is going to flow freely down to Pluto and might be working in tandem with Pluto somehow. So how is Mars' experience in Libra, which you would have described, how might that intermingle freely with whatever Pluto is doing in Aquarius? And then same thing, okay, let's think about how Pluto might be sending their energy of intensity to a planet of disruption. So now we've got maybe intense disruptions that this poor Mars, who's just trying to navigate life and not being well supported, they're dealing with some intense disruptions here, maybe freely moving around. That's more of a difficult delineation. But what if this person was also a super smarty pants? What if this is someone's birth chart and they're like a super smarty pants and they're like a crazy inventor person? Now we've got some like, wow, this person's like analyzing things with jet fuel because we've got this maybe ingenuity, eye for novelty, experimentation. We've got this intense and analytical Aquarian thing happening, and Mars putting in efforts that might be translatable to Libra, other people. So this could also constructively, and especially air signs are so intellectual. This is like a lot of cognitive energy, a lot of mental energy. So then that could be channeled if the person is able to, probably based on the rest of the sky, if the person is able to channel this energy into something constructive, or if they're responding to chaos externally. I don't know which way this would go, and probably in more than one way. Now, because it's trines, sure, if you want to lean toward more constructive things, great. But I do think it really matters what the ingredients are. Like if this is a day chart person and we're dealing with, let's pretend it is, and we're dealing with Mars, then it's going to be more tough. So all to say, that's my spiel on trines. Let's see if there's any questions. And if anyone else has a trine that they want to throw up, we can try to do that exercise again. All right. Oh, they were getting excited for a grand trine in water signs. And then they forgot about the Mars Scorpio overcoming, yeah, Pluto. Yeah, that's a thing. This is actually a good point in terms of transits in general right now, what's going on in the sky. At the end of the month, so like the 23rd, 24th. Yeah, thank you for this prompt. Water trines. Let's talk about this water trine. Um, if I can find my correct day here. Okay. So around the 23rd, Mars is going to enter Scorpio, which is great, cool. Mars is in their own sign. And what I'm kind of looking forward to, and of course your mileage will vary and maybe people would disagree with me. I personally experience, and this again could be based on how my chart interacts with it, but I experience Mars Saturn trines as really awesome. It's like the discipline and the structure of Saturn intermingling with the motivation and the energy of Mars. And it's like I actually get stuff done. Like I actually do things. Yeah, so I personally enjoy having these two planets in a trine together. But one little hiccup here that we might have to get through is going to be that when Mars enters into Scorpio here at the end of September, it has to pass this square with Pluto. And that is a really difficult one. At best, it is being able to move mountains type of energy because there's so much intense energy in here. At worst, it is violence. So take care of yourself on the 23rd and the 24th. But then after that, then we get to enjoy that applying water trine. And in water signs, now it's much less intellectual. There's probably less words. Oh, yeah. And then Jupiter. There's probably less words to describe because water is often nonverbal. It's feelings, it's vibes, it's intuition. So the motivation and the discipline, especially like Scorpio, I like to think about Scorpio, especially Mars and Scorpio. It's like a big, strong working dog that will get done whatever its job is to do, but they don't just get up for anything. I think sometimes when we think about strong Mars in our brains, or at least maybe I'm projecting, I think about Aries a lot. And when I think about Mars, I think a lot about how fast they are and how they can kind of just get the initiative seemingly to do anything. Like they think of anything and they're just like, let's go do it, let's go do it. It's so refreshing and I love it and I wish I could bottle it up. But anyway, Scorpio isn't like that. Scorpio does not operate like that. They really need to like want to do it. You know, it's like that singular focus that can turn into obsession that everyone pathologizes. That also it's like, yeah, once you do feel that motivation, get out of my way. So I'm really looking forward to this trine. It is interacting with Jupiter, and Jupiter is a stabilizing agent. They are sending happy, positive messages to Mars saying, hey, buddy, you can do it. Very encouraging, saying, hey, I know you're a warrior, but do you need snacks? And then Mars is like, fine, I'll have snacks. And then that just helps even more to prod Saturn into doing whatever they need to do in there in Pisces. But this is a really, it feels constructive. It feels the Saturn, Mars, Jupiter, water trine. It feels very constructive. It's slow. It is intuitive. It kind of comes, it feels like it's an energy that comes from deep within or from the ground up and then pushes us to do stuff. It's not loud, but it is powerful. And so I am looking forward to that versus, you know, a fire or an air grand trine. That's going to be a lot more externalizing, a lot louder than, you know, maybe what is really powerful, but maybe in a bit more of a subtle way. But yeah, again, we do have to get over that little square, which hopefully is little and not big. I hope that answers that question. Yeah, that was good to look at. Oh, my stars. Yes. Oh, okay. Thank you. Um, Ezzy says that in music theory, a trine is like two tones distance, like a two tones distance. According to the context, that can generate pleasing and easy things. So it's like two notes that sound good together, or like, you know, two of the same notes an octave apart. Like they're gonna work together. I don't know if that's what you mean. I don't know anything about music technical stuff, so hopefully I didn't totally butcher that. But yeah, thinking about a trine, I mean, at the very least, is two notes that work well together. I think that's a really beautiful way of thinking about it. Um, yeah. And Mars, they can be cumbersome. I agree. Uh, I have a Mars in Scorpio, so I'm a little biased, but and I might be projecting, of course, some of my situation, but every time I have given that description to other people with a Mars in Scorpio or some other planet in Scorpio, a lot of them really identify with it. I haven't had anyone have that not land who has a really strong Scorpio thing going on. Um, yeah, it's got to be the right thing that they want to focus on. It's not just any old thing. All right. Yeah, make art during that time. Water, great art making, making connections. Perfect. Yay, trines. Usually happy to see them. Um, no, I'm gonna move on to, and you know, I guess I did this in the right order. Let's talk about Pluto, Neptune sextile. And yeah, let's look at when the last time was we had one of these. I was cooking up some things last night. This is where if you have my beginner astrology cheat sheet, and I have a table that has a bunch of planetary significations. Essentially, you can do the same thing that I've been doing for the last 24 hours, is just squishing all of these keywords together. So I'm going to be sharing some keywords for each of these planets. Now we know too that a sextile, these things are going to be working together like as he was saying, like two notes that are trying to work harmoniously together or coming together in a more pleasing way. coming together more easily, more constructively. So we can lean again, sextiles and trines. I like to lean toward that constructive, favorable outcome, even if it's potential planets that can do shenanigans. But we'll also talk about the potential shenanigans, like when two people who both love doing shenanigans get together. And then you can guess what's going to happen. So the last time this happened was 1986. So there's going to be a subgeneration of people who got this. I am one of these people. I was born in 1987. I just realized this. That's so funny. I like didn't realize that I have this. That's actually really good because that means that I wasn't thinking about my own experiences too much. Okay. So if we have, I know this is fast, but it's being recorded. So you'll have it if you want to listen back to it. But I'm just going to rattle off some keywords for Pluto. Power, powerful, power dynamics, power differentials, intensity, control, themes about control, creation and destruction, which I think makes sense about why Pluto is about transformation, because what is transformation other than destruction and creation, creation and destruction, both extremely transformative processes. Violence, corruption, distortion, amplification or hiding, obsession. Also Pluto in terms of, I was thinking about the more modern sense about, Pluto and being affiliated with Scorpio in the eighth house and that whole ball of wax. But if we run with that and we say, well, what if Pluto is what is taboo or occult or kind of be hush hush about it? I thought about that and it makes so much sense too, because we want to try to control what is taboo. We want to have control around it, who's talking about it, when, who's doing it, when, where, and why. It makes people uncomfortable, which is very Plutonian. People get real uncomfortable with Pluto stuff. And people want to have power over the taboo sometimes. So it makes a lot of sense. So taboo, we'll throw it in there too. With Neptune, some of my keywords are fantasy and illusion. And again, none of these are, I mean, you can guess like the ways in which a lot of these can be bad or seen in difficult or not favorable situations. But you'll see how I can put them together and, I can speak to some constructive stuff depending on the context. It doesn't have to be all the worst case stuff. But anyway, Neptune, fantasy, illusions, visions and dreams, acceptance, escapism, deception, which kind of goes along with like the illusion thing, I think. And I guess just to add in the nuance, movies are deceptive. Like they create an illusion. There's a lot of things that can be deceptive, like camouflage that animals use to survive is technically deception. So it's not always shenanigans. Sometimes deception is necessary for survival. I digress. Unclear. Neptune is unclear. It's a lack of clarity. It's confusing, confuses stuff. It's great for spirituality. It's very about spiritual stuff itself. But in the material world, it does not help one fill out a form or do Virgo-y type things or Saturn type things. So confusing, unclear. It is also spirituality. Neptune is faith. It is dissolving and it is formless. Very interesting. And both, like Pluto often is invisible because, I mean, if you think about power, power often thrives in silence. And I've heard Austin Coppock say this, and I wish I could remember. It was during one of the monthly forecasts. They were talking about Pluto like around May. It was like earlier this year. And I remember Austin saying something about, yeah, power thrives in the dark or in silence or not being seen. And so talking about things, bringing things out in the open, then removes the power. And why I'm talking about that is because both Neptune and Pluto can be very formless and shapeless and shifty and not like it's very subtle. and not apparent. And so we're getting two planets that can be pretty tricky together. Um, okay, so that's a bunch of word salad. Those are a bunch of words that we can toss together into a salad. So um, I guess maybe before, just for fun, for the people who are here, no pressure. You do not have to participate if you don't want to. No expectations, only possibilities. Um, does anyone have any Pluto, Neptune, sextile things? Is there any way that you can think of as I was saying those words? Did anything come up for anyone who's here about how those themes could come together? Um, I thank you, Ezzy. You said Austin said the other day, Pluto conceals, Neptune camouflages. Yeah, right there. Um, I always think about my own Neptune. I have Mercury, Neptune, Sun conjunction, and it's sextile Pluto, and how I've hidden so much from pharmacy people before I was doing astrology, and I was kind of hiding about that in some ways. Although for it's funny because for anyone who's been paying attention to me for years now, you'll know that my government name has been up at the top of the screen the whole time. So I'm only hiding like a little bit because I'm hiding from squares, the squares who can't hang. But before I was doing this cool circle thing that the squares couldn't handle, it was burlesque and go-go dancing and basically my tits were all over town. And as a medical professional, people can't hang. So that's why I have this name. That's where that came from. And there's been a lot of camouflaging. And another fun thing too is like, I don't know if anyone remembers Jenna Marbles. I don't know what happened to them, but she was like this internet celebrity person, and she would go from, and she talked about this herself, how she was kind of a shapeshifter, where when she went from no makeup to makeup, it was like a whole different person. And I'm kind of like that. So I was kind of hiding in plain sight because I had so much stage makeup on that people didn't recognize me, who like I did know, or at least they were polite enough that they didn't let me know that they knew. But yeah, there are these ways that this can come out that aren't totally horrible. And also, I mean, the whole Epstein thing that's been going on. There's no chart for that, or maybe there are charts for that that I haven't explored. But just thinking about ways that Neptune and Pluto could come together to describe the camouflaging of some corrupt stuff or some power plays, like, yeah, I think if you think about it for a second, like there's a bunch of seedy, not great potential outcomes when you put these two planets together. I promise I'm going to give us some positive ones before we leave this discussion, but uh, someone has Moon, Mercury in their 12th. Oh, hi. I'm also all of those planets I just mentioned are also in the 12th. So it's a vibe. Yeah, 12th house life is definitely a vibe. Oh, the Olsen twins, iconic. Oh, it's a whole thing to unpack. Um, okay, so there's some other people who are also part of this. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and someone who has the sextile across Sagittarius and Aquarius, or no, Pluto and Sag, sextile, Aquarius, Neptune. Okay, so we've got some people who experience this. So let's talk about some cool things that it can be besides hiding of corruption. Okay, so powerful. Now I'm just putting Neptune words in front of powerful. Powerful fantasy, powerful illusions, powerful visions, powerful dreams, whether that's each night or like thinking about a vision or a dream of the future. Um, Powerful spiritual experiences, powerful acceptance or unconditional love, powerful faith, also very powerful confusion or deception, um, power dynamics or power differentials that lead to confusion or confusion around power dynamics, confusion around power differentials. And when I say power differential, one example of that that comes up a lot naturally in life is just like a teacher-student relationship or a patient-provider relationship in the medical sphere or a legal kind of client thing. Those are all power dynamics. Someone has more power or authority than another person, or a judge and a plaintiff. So anything like that is a power dynamic. So when we add Neptune into that, already it's kind of a hot potato. So, and we want to be really explicit, and that's where it's so important with power differentials, power dynamics, to be explicit, to be, as open as you can about as much as you can, and just name it so that that power can be diffused a bit. Uh, okay. And like when people have some of this stuff in their chart, they might experience some of these powerful things. They might be aware, just have awareness, like they'll see it when maybe other friends don't. Um, if you just see like a couple that's in a toxic relationship, maybe you can see it and someone else doesn't. Uh, or experiencing these things or witnessing them. So internally, examples happening inside of us and witnessing it externally. And this is where it's really important to look at the house topics, of course, that this is falling in for you, because then it's also going to pinpoint the areas of life that you're going to run into this stuff the most. Um, so let's see, let's keep going with the cool stuff. Uh, uh, intensity to all these things. So very profound spiritual experience. And speaking of clarity, I also looked at Planets in Transit by Robert Hand because I do like that book. I know it's a bit outdated in a lot of ways, and there's some older concepts that we've kind of evolved from. However, I do think it's still a solid text. And he talks about profound experiences, um, more concern with the mystical, and this is in transit, but if it's in a birth chart, maybe that person is more concerned with mystical and otherworldly beliefs, more intense interest or even obsession with what is spiritual or mystical. Whoops. Oh. Interested in exploring depths of existence, having profound and revealing experiences. Uh, and that's funny because, like, if I think of the word revealing, I mean, psychologically, there's that whole thing. But then, I mean, mine's in my 10th and my 12th, and I did burlesque. And so, of course, very revealing, literally. Made my parents extremely uncomfortable. My family was not pleased. And then, let's see, Robert Hand said, if one is ready, these can be very enlightening experiences, spiritually or otherwise. He implied that if one is not ready, maybe some of this profound or heavy or intense kind of spiritual stuff or visions, I mean, it could cause the wrong chart or the wrong person a lot of suffering or mental health challenges, I think, depending on. Yeah, so let's see. Uh, so then control power dynamics in a spiritual environment, don't love it. Uh, Disillusion of power. That's interesting. Amplification. So if Pluto can amplify, because sometimes I do think they do that in the same way that their intensity. It's like, well, amplification is just like more intense sound. Um, so with Pluto, whatever it's in touch with, it might amplify it. So amplifying Neptune things. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Actually, my list is way longer, but I think we've kind of gotten the point. And we could go on for hours probably thinking about different ways that these things come together. Um, but yeah, as long as everyone's like healthy and safe and empowered, that's kind of the main question, and not getting too off the deep end, I would say. And I'll just leave it at that. So hopefully that helps a bunch of people in the sub-generation. Again, anyone born in like 1986, 1987, and then yeah, again, even into the further signs. Let's actually kind of curious now how long they keep doing that. Yeah. So then there's another subgeneration who has this. So it's not uncommon. A lot of people have it, but they're going to have it in different areas of their life because it's going to show up in different houses based on your rising sign. Yay, sextiles. Could be shenanigans. Maybe intentionally. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, slang. Wow. I did once. Now I feel like I'm an old retired racehorse. I've gone out to pasture on YouTube. Just kept catching up on comments here. Kate says Pluto Neptune is like the documentary channel Sift White Underbelly. I guess Google it. We'll have to Google it, check it out, search engine it. Um, and then Oh, soft white underbelly. Okay, yeah. Yeah, all the also, I don't know if it's a cult documentary or just a different type of documentary, but yeah, culty stuff. Uh and it is kind of fascinating that I mean, if you just look at all the cult documentaries on Netflix, I've watched all of them since Pluto went into my first house. I watched so many and it was sad because like I think my main takeaway from all the cult documentaries was how sadly easy it is to be manipulated, to be, everyone is subject to propaganda. Like the quickest way to become um like to become propagandized is to believe that you are not susceptible to propaganda. You're not above propaganda. No one is. And watching all the cult documentaries, it makes you really see that because it's people from all walks of life, all backgrounds. And, maybe there was something in these sub-generations where a lot of this culty stuff got documented because we had videos recording for the first time in human history. Think about all the cults that have existed, and okay, let's get wide. Like historically, the word cult is not always bad, but in this modern exploitative sense that we see it in so much, yeah, we're not talking some like specific sect of some ancient tradition where we're talking about the word cult. I feel like that's like a different usage of it. But thinking about the 1980s and 1990s and early 2000s, and even today, there's a lot of cult stuff going on. And maybe that has something to do with the sextile. I don't know, just totally guessing at this point. But it just flagged it because you said documentary. You said the magic word documentary. But I will check that out. Yeah, propaganda. Maybe that should be in there. Uh, all right. Let's see. For our third and final topic. Now, this is one where in my, and I'll link it below later. Um, I did a talk on Venus retrograde, and I talked about the descent of Inanna. So for those who didn't see that, I'm going to do kind of my short speed run of that myth, but you can check out the longer. I did the reading of it in this other video. But what, I guess, who Inanna is in the Mesopotamian cultures around the time that this Western astrology from Northern Africa and Southwest Asia was created, before we had Venus, before we had Aphrodite, we had Ishtar and Inanna. And not only were they a goddess of love, beauty, everything that's pleasing and delightful, they were also a war goddess. I mean, granted, back then, like most of the gods were like, it was like there was something and a war god, this thing, and also a war god. So Venus was a love god, a beauty goddess, but also a war goddess. And you also see in some of the different myths, or several myths about Inanna, where they're a key character, but they also relate, like, they had the run in with Gilgamesh, and they came on to Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh rejected Inanna, and Inanna got upset. And so are these themes, and then wanted revenge. So there's these themes of relational discord. It's not just love. Venus can also be all the difficult things around relationship. So now that we know what Venus is, and we know that Venus is Inanna, and they're the same, in my mind at least, uh, they go on this journey. And so the story of their descent to the underworld is really what it's mimicking astrologically is Venus's trip through the sun when Venus stations retrograde and moves through the beams of the sun. They do what's called a phasis. They make a disappearance in the sky and a reappearance, like in the, say, like you have a planet in the morning sky, and then you see them slowly descend toward the sun every morning till you can't see them anymore in the morning. And then a few weeks later, like say it's Mercury, they pop up in the evening sky. And they've gone through this whole journey. So I'll show you what I mean here. If we look at Venus, when was the last, it was this last spring. We had, oh, that's not it. We had a Venus retrograde. Whoa, that happened across Aries and Pisces. So we had a couple of retrogrades that in March and April spanned across Aries and Pisces. And so let's watch Venus now. I'm just going to go week by week. We can see Venus move into the station retrograde, and then they start to move into the sun. So I'll go backward one step, forward. So they get close to the sun, then they move through. Now Venus is on the other side of the sun. So actually, let me back up. Before Venus sets, they're in the evening sky. So we can imagine we're all here standing in the middle, looking up at the beautiful sky above our heads. And Venus is here setting in the sky right after the sun has dipped below the horizon. We can see Venus. That's one of the first things that's going to come up in the sky after the sun sets. And then we're going to see Venus dip below. And then eventually they're going to come out in the morning sky. So then if we go by the hour here, this is April of 2025. Now Venus is rising in the morning right before the sun rises. So all to say, Venus goes through this whole journey where they go station retrograde, they move through the sun, they come out on the other side, they station, and then they're direct again. But this whole thing is considered a descent into the underworld. So there's a corollary here, and then we can overlay just one on top of the other, the parts of this descent of Inanna into hell, going through hell and back as the retrograde Venus story. So this is also discussed with much more eloquence by Demetra George. They did, and I'll link this below too afterwards. There was a astrology podcast episode that was really good where it was right after the Barbie movie. They talk about Barbie and then they talk about the story of Inanna and the corollary that we see in the Barbie movie. It's also this like underworld journey where Barbie like loses all of her, whatever is like, I'll let Demetra tell the story. She gets wrinkles in Inanna's descent myth. So let's go through that because it's going to tell the story of Venus going retrograde, experiencing Venusian themes differently, less effectively. So we had Inanna. And I'm not going to say the motivation for why. There's some argument between scholars about why Inanna was called to the underworld. She was called to visit the underworld by her sister Ereshkigal, who is lord of the underworld. So Venus was a goddess of the upper world. Ereshkigal was a goddess of the lower world, the underworld. And so Venus has to make this really perilous journey. And part of the deal is that Venus has all these special powers. She's also got like talismans and all of these kind of like gear, essentially, that give her superpowers, kind of. I imagine it like, I don't know, Batman's tool belt, kind of. And she's required to give up these powers as she descends into hell, or I'm going to call it hell, into the underworld. Then she gets to the bottom of the underworld. She's greeted by, the guards for her sister, and she's really vulnerable. She is naked at this point. She doesn't have any of her powers. And the naked part isn't the problem, by the way. That's more of like a weird Christian white hegemony thing, that being naked is a problem. The issue is that she's without her talismans and her powerful thingies, So that's the problem. And she's really brought into this like lowly position in some ways, in front of her sister. And trigger warning, there's a lot of violence that happens between the two. Uh, Basically, Ereshkigal kills Inanna and demands that she stay in the underworld. And at this point, Plan B has been set into motion because I forgot to say this. Before Inanna went to the underworld, she told some friends, she's like, hey, if I don't come back in 3 days, you got to send a search party, please. I am not okay. And so she doesn't come back in 3 days. And so her friends, these spirit kind of beings, they go around and they're asking everyone for help. They're asking all these different gods for help. No one is helping. They're like, well, she got herself into this mess, basically. And at one point, of course, you knock on the door 3 times. The third person that the friends asked for help, Enki, who is a corollary for the sea goat, they help. They're going to help get problem solve and figure out how to get Inanna back from the underworld. And so a bunch of stuff happens and they do all the things they need to do and all like this whole order of operations that needs to happen to get Inanna back. So Inanna is eventually, she's essentially rescued. And uh, because, long story short, they work with Ereshkigal. The friends, they have a conversation with Ereshkigal. They get Ereshkigal to agree, forgive, let Inanna come back up. And as Inanna is coming back up to the upper world, what's in the myth, in the descent myth, is like all this discussion about how all the joys and the delights and the yum yums are just not there. It's like there's no sweet sounds, no good smells, no one's in love, everyone's fighting. It's like all the Venus stuff gone wrong. And now we're definitely at this point of the story, by the way, like, oh, I should back up because I forgot about Kazimi's. I sped right past the Kazemi point, but essentially at this point, it's like Venus is retrograde and she's coming out of the beams of the sun. And that's when she's experiencing like, man, this is just not fun. I don't feel good. And then when Inanna gets back up, she has to do some tasks. She has to do some stuff to make it stick so that she can stay in the upper world. So, it's not like she's out of the woods yet. Just because she gets out of the beams of the sun, then there's some other things that need to happen. And then it's the end of the story. Inanna's in the upper world. It's all good. Everyone moves on. And that part of the story is like Venus stationing direct after moving through the beams of the sun. And then the story's over. The point at which Inanna is like dead and her friends are trying to go help her, that's like the same as when Venus and the sun are conjunct one another. So here, March 22nd, we had a Venus Cazimi. Venus was in the heart of the sun this is like the middle of her underworld journey, basically. She's gone into the beams of the sun. Now she's in the heart of the sun. And it's a rebirth. It's a rebirth experience. It's being reborn. It's going through this really intense, like think about like a birth of a baby. It's like very intense. It looks very uncomfortable. That's what Venus is going through, or any planet that's retrograde moving through the sun like this. So it's a rebirth for Venus. And then they do their climb out of the underworld and station direct. Okay, so that was a lot. That was a whole story that I did a speed run through, but we can kind of see how it goes along with that, like 40 days and 40 nights. We can't see Venus, and that's when Venus is too close to the sun to be seen. Now, what about secondary progressions? Because I was kind of just showing us an example from transits, which was, just this last spring. But who should I bring up? Yeah, I just saw Whitney in the chat. I'm gonna put up Whitney Houston. Um, so okay, everyone who has a birth chart, they come in with a certain Venus-Sun phase relationship. Venus is in some kind of relationship with the sun. They're either in the morning sky, they're in the evening sky, they're stationary, they're retrograde. In this case, Venus is really close to the sun, moving direct. So we'll see like Venus is going to move through the heart of the sun, moving direct. So this is not the same story I just talked about because Venus is direct. Um, but all to say, that's more like her union with Dumuzi, her husband. That's more like the direct one. But what I do with this story is I say, basically, whenever you were born, whatever Venus Sun phase relationship you come in with, that's the part of the story you came in on. So I guess maybe the Venus direct myth to me is when Venus is entirely embracing being queen of the upper world. She is married to her husband Dumuzi, who is a guy, and they're living their life. And she's doing her queenly stuff. Very direct. So it's more complicated than that when we have a planet under the beams, obviously. But just again, thinking about this cycle and the myth that goes along with it, this is where she got dropped in with that story. So like someone who gets dropped in during like say Venus is retrograde and close to the sun and under the beams in your birth chart. You were dropped in the middle of the Venus descent myth. And so if your life has been difficult with Venus things, yeah, totally. It's not going to be straightforward. So then how does the secondary progress chart come in? This is how I kind of tell where people are in that story. And it can show the progression because the secondary progression, it can show the progression. The secondary progressions, it's like a fractal of time. It's like transits, but slower and stretched out. So instead of like the sun moving a degree a day in the progressions, the secondary ones, it moves a degree a year. Instead of the moon spending 2.5 days in a sign, in secondary progressions, the moon is spending 2.5, or I said a day and a half, 2.5 days in a sign. In secondary progressions, it's 2.5 years in a sign. So it's this slowed down thing. So we can start to see, you know, where that person's like how they move through that. So let's say you were born with that difficult Venus experience. Maybe 30 years down the road, we can extrapolate that Venus has done their whole retrograde. They've moved through the heart of the sun and now they're visible again. They're direct. Maybe they're in a whole different sign. So yeah, let's watch Whitney and how their Venus progresses. I don't know, maybe this is a bad example. I don't think we're going to see her do a retrograde. But we can see the Venus story. Here in 1980, they would have been 27. Or, yeah, I don't know if I did that math right, 17. And we see Venus moving through the beams of the sun. And then I would be looking next, like I want to see when Venus is going to get out of the beams. So we really see like as soon as Venus goes into Libra, and this is around 2003. And I don't know any of the details of her life. I'm just using this as like a kind of a simulation. Now Venus is in Libra, secondary progressed. It took many years because she was born in 1963. Venus secondary progressed into Libra, 2 signs away from her original position in 2003. At this point, she's no longer harmed by the rays of the sun. So I would expect Venus's condition to improve significantly at this time. And likewise for other Venus ruled things to go significantly better in her life. I'm not sure what year she got away from her abusive spouse, but could have been around here. But then really too, things change when Venus becomes visible on the other side of things, when a planet makes their appearance. And that's not until like the end of, and she's no longer with us, but Venus is now far away. And so that would, if she was still with us, this would be a whole nother different part of her Venus story. So this is how I check in on people and see compared to where you got dropped off, did you get dropped off at the beginning of that descent story, the middle, the end? Were you not born during that descent story, so you don't have to deal with this at all, and you can just ignore this whole discussion. But then the secondary progressions can show how far along have you come in that journey. Is it in the rear view mirror? Is it something that you're going to experience later in life? Um, that's kind of the deal. So it can put some bookends on things in a wider sense. I hope that helps. But yeah, myth is really great because it can tell a story that I think humans, I mean, there's a reason why it's a myth, you know. Uh, Humans have experienced relational discord since the beginning of humanity, and we're going to have stories about it that reflect our experiences with relationship. You know, there's certain love stories that go across cultures and certain enemy stories that go across cultures. So myth, I like it because it can kind of externalize and bring it out, like, and make it more objective. Like, hey, this isn't, you don't have to take this personally. This is just something that happens to humans. And you might experience part of that. So it can help give, I think, a little distance from our own personal stuff so that we can get a better view at it. Let me see if there's any follow-up questions to that, if that was all just gibberish. Yeah, no, no other questions. So, let me think. Last call. You got any other questions? And I'll make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, yeah, maybe last thing. So, in terms of the secondary progressed planets, um, it really can speak to how people kind of change and unfurl as their life goes on. I think one of the easier ways to see it is to watch the moon in secondary progressions. I guess I should share my screen. Uh, so we can watch the moon. You know, of course, Whitney Houston is always going to have an Aries moon, but for 2.5 years at a time, like right now, it would be more of a Leo flavored moon for 2.5 years. And, you know, at one point, there was 2.5 years where secondary progressed moon was in Taurus, which is very different paced than an Aries moon. So we can kind of explain these 2.5 year chunks of time where maybe we feel different, our vitality might feel different, and also our focuses might feel a little different. So wherever the secondary progressed moon is, that is going to be focusing on house topics that it's in. So um, now widening this to think about a slower planet, I mean, these are bigger, longer vibe shifts. Like, you know, Venus is going to be in a sign for at the least like almost 30 years because they're about the same speed as the sun. The sun is in a sign for 30 years. And then, so like the example the person who was asking me the question gave was that they had or they had natal Venus in Aries that had secondary progressed into Taurus. And they were feeling like very different in terms of dealing with, you know, like, yeah, they felt this, maybe it sounded to me at least like they were feeling this more Venusian, Taurian, like really straight up Venus, like, because Venus in Aries, that's not your prototypical Venus. That's like someone who's charming and spicy and not trying to make harmony. You know, they're trying to have a good time maybe and win over a crowd, but they're not as not as concerned with peace and stability as a Venus and Taurus might be. So if we notice like changes in ourselves that we're like, when did I start being like this? When I used to be like that, why am I not like that anymore? Sometimes it can be explained by looking at the secondary progress chart. And then, I mean, the good news and the bad news is for this person who has secondary progressed Venus and Taurus, and they're kind of having a hard time, you know, kind of wielding it or figuring it out. You've got plenty of time. It's going to be in there for like over 2 decades. So you're going to have plenty of time figuring it out. And for what it's worth, I do think that the condition of the secondary progressed planet speaks to how well that stuff is going to work in your life. So, like for this Pisces rising person, their, let's say their secondary progressed Venus was in good condition, then I would expect their Venus ruled topics to go better for them during that time. So that's a plus for whatever that's worth. And when I say go better, I mean more advantageous, favorable outcomes with Venus stuff. Beauty, love, art, romance, relationship, experiencing pleasure. Which, if you've, and now I don't know this person, but if for whatever reason your life has not been just people handing you, delights and joys, and ease, and then later in life, you have delights and joys and ease around you, it can feel awkward and weird and honestly a little, it can get up some of that skepticism that why is this nice? Why is this going so well? So it's not, I don't want to be dismissive and say, oh, if you see a planet in good condition in a place and those things are operating functionally and well now, and maybe they haven't before. And not, I don't mean to say like, oh, you should just be thankful, because there can be these nuances of like, well, what was your Venus before? And if you have not been given like a lot of sweet things in your life, and then all of a sudden people are like, well, here's a bunch of macarons, you're going to be like, this is way too sweet. So it might be some adjustment time, and again, it's an overlay. So you've got I guess maybe this is my last point. You've got the root chart. The root chart never goes away. We can never ignore the root chart. I don't even care if it's solar returns. I got betrayed this week too. I got betrayed in the last 2 weeks by focusing too much on the solar return chart and not focusing on what that solar return chart, how that was dropping into the birth chart. Um, so anyway, I digress. But like Whitney, they're always going to have an Aries moon, right? But for 2.5 years at a time, they might have like an overlay flavor of, like in this case, a Leo moon for 2.5 years. Uh, it's an overlay. We can add it on to what's already there. So it's not like they're totally going to forget their Aries moon during this time. But yeah, anyway, that was my last point. It's got to be an overlay. Okay. And any final things? Oh, wow. Thank you for the tip. I appreciate it. That was very kind. Thank you. Ooh, good comments. Oh, there's so many good comments. Yeah, so as far as someone's asking, how long do the effects of a progressed Venus retrograde phase usually last? And are there particular milestones like the station points that astrologers see as especially important? Yeah, so the stations, the moments where a planet is 15 degrees away from the sun on either side, those are really important. They have exclamation points around them. That's what Chris Brennan always says, just puts an emphasis on that time period. So, um, yeah, we're gonna be pretending like, let's pretend Whitney Houston is a vampire from Twilight and they exist for hundreds of years and they never die. um, let's look at, does it let me do it with this? I don't know if it lets me actually use my shortcut thing. I don't think it does it. No, it doesn't. Hold, please. Buffering. Well, I gotta do it eventually. It must have happened just before they. Let's go backwards. Yeah, I'm trying to do this because I want to show you. I don't want to just use words. I might have to just use words if it's not cooperating with me. This is something I need to write to Astrogold about. So when I use transits, I'm just going to go on a rant now. When I use transits, just the clock, it lets me use all of these great, oh yeah, and I'm not sharing my screen again. Um, so when I'm doing transits, it lets me use all of these cool tools. I don't know if you can see this drop-down menu. I'm getting drop-down little thingies that are allowing me to pick ingress to station. So I don't have to just like scroll around forever looking for it to happen. Um, when I'm in the secondary progressed mode, it doesn't work. I don't get to use any of my shortcut stuff. So now everything's manual. So the time, so yes, like you're gonna have to find like when does, it's slow. So it's gonna be like weeks around like the station. That whole time, like weeks around it. It's not an exact science, but like as a planet stations, their energy just gets more and more intense. And as the planet is making their phasis, which again in secondary progressions, that's going to be like weeks of time that strong point is going to be around. So I would expect, the life to reflect something going on, but I would give myself like again, like weeks to work with to look for something that correlates. And then yeah, like finding the dates exactly because there are exact singular dates when things station. Yeah, that'll be an important time in the life too of the native, and that's all I would say. Without talking to someone and getting the context of their life, I can't like guess, oh, what happens during a Venus retrograde or direct station. It could be a billion things. I could guess forever. And it would be much easier and quicker to talk to that person about the house topics that planet is stationing in. To ask them about Venus topics like love, romance, beauty, vices, yum yums, things like that. But to answer your question, there are specific times that are going to be more important in that story, like particular milestones. That is very true. So I notice as well, like when Venus is becoming visible, people's lives usually start functioning better. So, or those Venus topics start functioning better more and more and more like after that planet makes their appearance and becomes visible in the sky. Um, I hope that answers it. Oh, someone's given a cool example. Their sister's Venus retrograde in Aries, secondary progression, it went direct when her daughter was born. So something about love, relationships, connection that was very special, very impactful, happening during a station. Right on. Hello, Bonnie. Beautiful. Thank you for that example. Yeah, it feels like an easy thing for Astrogold to fix. I don't and the error could be behind the keyboard. I'm always open to the possibility that it's just me. I do have a Mercury Neptune conjunction in the 12th. My Mercury is heavily afflicted. It's not a great Mercury. It's amazing I can do any of this. I was getting the little code things I need to put into the right fields to make my Zoom and YouTube kiss and make out. And I was just astounded still years later I ever figured out how to do this. So I could be wrong about Astrogold, but that's what I've been noticing is it doesn't work for me like that. Uh, all right. I think that's it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for hanging in there. I know it's actually way past time. And yeah, I've still got a couple things I got to do tonight. Let me just double check. I don't think I left any other thing unturned that I needed to. My next thing, God, it'll have to wait till next month. I've really been wanting to do this chart. In Madison, Wisconsin, many years ago, there was a storage facility that was housing like tons of butter, like hundreds of pounds of butter, and also cheese. And it started on fire, and this was in like the early 90s. And there was a butter fire, and then a butter flood, a butter cheese flood, and like 3 feet of butter and cheese flowed out of this building at one point, and there is a chart for all of it. So I want to present the butter flood. Thank you, Vince. Thank you. Big thank you to Vince. I'm going to say it now so I don't skip it next month because I've been skipping it because other stuff keeps coming up that's like more pertinent. But I really want to talk about the butter flood. So that's what we'll talk about next month, next Q&A. And I have my forecast at the end of the month, which I have not chosen. Did I not choose it yet? I don't think I did. No. Yeah, question mark. TBD. I don't know when I'll be doing my forecast, but it'll be at the end of the month. So my forecast for October, it's coming. I do it here, as you will see on all my past channel content. I do not have discount codes. I haven't been running those for a while, but I have been trying to make it more clear that I have a sliding scale. So if finances are a barrier and you meet the requirements of using the sliding scale, that's an option. So check it out. A lot of people qualify. So check that out on my website. It's on my FAQ page and on the About Me section at www.aligninglightastrology.com. And also my email. If there's any questions or concerns and you want to email me, that's at aligninglighastro@gmail.com. Oh, I remember. I was going to brag about myself, and now it's at the end. I should have been at the beginning. I'll do it next time. I put up a bunch of reviews. I forgot to look at my reviews for like a year. And then I was like, wow, there's a lot of reviews in here. And it was like the best 2 hours of my life recently reading all these beautiful reviews. So I put up over 40 on my website. So if you want to know what other people think about me, now to be honest, I did get one negative review and I didn't put it up there because who does that? Um, but just to be fair, but I got 40 over 40 good ones. Yeah. And thank you to everyone who gave me that feedback. And thank you to everyone who got a reading with me. I've been reading since 2020, since 2020. And actually, yeah, this is my fifth, I'm having my 5-year anniversary of doing readings. And I don't know how many I've done, but I've been doing this full time for 5 years. And I know it's well over 1,000. It must be well over 1,000 by now, at least. Um, I do 2 a day. I do like 8 a week. You can do the math. It's been a lot. Um, I think that's it. So, mm. Yeah. And okay, I gotta say it because I'm in America. I know everyone who watches me isn't in America. And I know there's been a lot of headlines headlining today, and maybe it feels crass or weird or whatever to like put myself out there. But also, like, if you know the headlines, like IDGAF, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to talk about myself during these headlines anyway, about, yeah, that Mayo man in the United States. I don't care. So I'm going to talk about myself and take up space, take up queer space with my queer self. That seems like the move today. So thanks, everyone. See you in a couple weeks for my forecast at the end of the month. Otherwise, I'll see you on Threads. I'll see you on Blue Sky. I'll see you around. Thanks, everyone.